Welcome to the show, Nitin.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for inviting me, and great to be on your show.
Thanks very much. Yeah, well, it's a very interesting time to be speaking with you. I'm in Melbourne. You're in Singapore, and we were just talking off air about how I guess the impact of COVID has affected individuals, but also workspaces at the moment in the point in time of recording this. So I'm interested today to really hear from you. You've got a very expansive background in the world of architecture or the built environment. Really interested to hear about how workspaces can be enhanced for performance for organisations, but also how workspaces can be built to be a little bit more mindful, and that's I'm going to be leaning into your experience or your knowledge as a meditation trainer. So Nitin, tell us a little bit about your career in the building and construction industry and architecture, and how that got you interested in meditation, and was there a point where they came together, or are they separate interests?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, in fact, I'll start the second part first. I would say long before I've got into this career. I mean, it was only in my first year of work in mid 1990s when I was in India. That's where got associated with the meditation practice. So that actually has continued over the last 20 plus years. And okay, my career did evolve from building materials to a bit in food and dairy when I was in India. Then when I moved to France for my MBA, after that it's been more or less in the environment of buildings, which started with home automation and then moved into the classical building materials, which was roofing, and now with Serge Ferrari, which is in tensile structures, which talk about or composite materials, which covers elements of outside exterior structures and even interior applications. So I would say meditation was, I mean, the starting point. But in the end, over the period of time, because of my work and travel and working across different time zones and different people, it's always been a kind of a normalizing element for me, even making career decisions, even trying to, manage with the time differences, with the hectic travels and everything to keep me at peace and be able to, do what I'm supposed to do. So it's been converging a lot over the last many, I would say, 2 decades now.
Yeah, amazing, and it's great to hear from you. Obviously, you're in a leadership role in the business that you operate, and you're traveling quite a lot. You're in Singapore. You're off to you were in India yesterday, and you're off to the US
Yes.
soon. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. So do you find that meditation is something that really just keeps you grounded throughout? The role that you're doing, which is obviously quite busy, and the travel aspect as well. So meditation, is that what it's really, where it fits in for you?
Absolutely. In fact, meditation has helped me in many ways. Obviously, the classical elements, what you will expect in meditation, the calmness, the relaxation, you feel that you're able to focus better. I mean, all those, I would say, byproducts always come. But beyond that, I mean, only people, if you've experienced meditation, people can feel that and understand in that sense that, getting your mind at rest or putting even thoughts keep on bothering you. I learned in fact, I knew that we have a lot of thoughts, but I never knew the number. As somebody told me that we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. I imagine one thought every 1.25 seconds. So, and we are not, our conscious mind is not even aware of that, because we can maybe focus on a couple of things at one point of time. So it always helps to, manage that, bring the focus. At times, because as I mentioned, as you also talked about the travel, what I have seen is a good meditation can also compensate to some element of sleep. I've read a paper where it says a good 1 hour of meditation can be equivalent to 3 to 4 hours of sleep, and I've seen that for myself. Coming sometimes traveling across zones with a 6 hour, 9 hour time difference, landing and then immediately getting ready for the work. Getting a chance to meditate in the flight helps me that I'm fresh and ready to go. Sometimes you have to make in any workplace, I would say anybody has to make sometimes difficult decisions, sometimes important decisions. And while you may have all the facts together, I think what meditation helps me is to help me go into my inside and get all the knowledge, wisdom which my subconscious has gathered while observing things, by noticing things and with past experiences. That then combining that feeling element with the thinking element, that's what meditation brings to me. If I look at it in the professional element, professional field of work and responsibility, because most of the time we think professionals, okay, you need to know the numbers, you need to think, you need to look at the facts and take the decision. But I've always felt the moment you add an element of feeling also to that, then really it kind of makes a full comprehensive, full exhaustive way of looking at things. And then I think generally I've seen you are always on the right track. At that moment sometimes people may feel, oh, what's the logic behind taking that decision? But over a period of time you would realize that that was the right one to take. And that comes, it's a very subtle element, but it comes from the feeling. Now you cannot capture the feeling which is coming from your inside unless your mind is at rest. So that's where the connection comes. When your mind is at rest, you have the elements to think and take decision, the facts are there, but the feeling comes from your heart. And if your mind is at rest, you capture that, you feel that, you sense that, and then you're able to combine that. So that's where I think I've seen more and more, and I've got a deeper developed understanding of that how it helps in that sense.
Yeah, and with all your, I guess, practice, that's a long. You've been doing this. It sounds like you've been practicing this individually for a long period of time.
Yes.
So that's really insightful what you're sharing there. And I also love hearing that from someone like yourself that's in a leadership role, because sometimes with the likes of meditation, perhaps, or even mindfulness, it is sometimes one of the things that people know they should maybe explore, but sometimes the workload or the stress levels of their current individual role overrides that, and they can't really even attempt the exercise. I guess just on that, what would your advice be to someone just to sort of dabble into this meditation, given that you are also a meditation trainer?
That's a good point you brought in. In fact, this is a question I get asked many times. I'm also a meditation trainer for 2 decades now. When conducting sessions for individuals or for corporate environments, they ask that, and I mean, as a meditation trainer, I'm a volunteer, so that's not something. The practice I follow, we charge for. We offer it free to the community. I always say, and sometimes it's difficult to understand. Again, I say that people who've not yet maybe had a session, I've always say that for me, it's the reverse. The fact that I'm able to do meditation and I try to do as regular as possible every day, I feel always I have more time at hand than when I'm not doing it. So it's not about, yes, when you start this journey, it's about thinking, oh, I need to take out 10 minutes, I need to take out half an hour, I need to take out 1 hour. Where will I get this time? I have a busy schedule, and everybody responds like that. But the moment you take it as part of your daily cycle, you wake up, you go, you brush your teeth, all those elements you do. Now if you integrate that meditation also, okay, maybe you need to get up possibly 30 minutes earlier, but the moment you do that, and the advantage it brings, as I talked about earlier, you will feel that you're fresh, you're alert, you're totally focused on whatever you do, even if it's 10 hours, 12 hours in meetings, in calls, or whatever. So you end up realizing that you have more time at hand, rather than thinking, oh, I have a daily schedule of 18 hours. How am I able to now take out another half an hour to do this meditation? So it's a mindset. I also know that it's easier said than done. Okay, I've experienced it. I can talk about it, but somebody who's not been in that, they'll still wonder. But then, it's always boils down to, you can talk hours and hours on meditation, but the meditation is really in the part of it, doing it. That's where you really feel the you'll the benefit of it, and you can take the advantage of that.
Yeah, and also I think that trying and then that accumulative effect of it, of repeating that little attempt over time is where the benefits are. No, thanks, and I've gone into that there because it's just a really interesting mix that you have of your experience and leadership, and also keeping yourself grounded through meditation. It's really fascinating for me. So. Switching gears a little bit here, Nitin, but let's talk about spaces or workspaces here. So I've been observing things from afar, and in our business at Pinnacle Health Group, we're very much in the space of building amenities and understanding, or trying to understand how things are working or things are trending at the moment through this rapid change that the world's going through. What do you think are the key trends in aesthetic design for office spaces or commercial real estate right now, given that this is in your realm and this is in your sort of wheelhouse, if you like?
Well, we are now seeing some interesting elements. I mean, okay, workspaces were already moving in a different way of design, I would say, even before COVID. People were re-looking at spaces. People were re-looking at, do we still look at the classical concept of having cabins or rooms? Are they closed? Are they open? Or in that sense? So open space was actually, I would say, one trend which was happening, but it's obviously magnified and accelerated after the COVID. So, but what we see also, and maybe it's because of the challenges which corporates are now facing to get people back to work, because I think they've realized that they can save in a big city. If I'm saying, you can save. I mean, if I possibly take an example of Sydney in Australia, I suppose. It's not easy, I mean, in terms of traffic and everything. And there are many cities in Asia and Europe. When people realize, oh, I could save 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour, 3 hours of daily commute, and I can still contribute sincerely and honestly, and the company, trust that. Then people are saying, why should I go even to back to work? I mean, it was working well. So I think that's accelerated in the way people are designing workspaces. They're making more like an home environment, if I may say so. More spaces, not like classical tables and chairs. Okay, they are still there. They will have to be there, but giving spaces where, okay, you can walk out of your room, sit there on a side, which is a more comfortable, colorful environment, have a quick chat with your colleague rather than sitting across the table, which kind of does not help in conversation. So that's more and more you see people having open spaces also, or more interaction spaces. If I may say, every company uses a different buzzword for that, to make it interesting. They have created nice, I would say, designs, colors. Sometimes in our products, in fact, it's interesting. We are also redesigning our head office, and it was the initial draft was being shown to some of us. So obviously we have products for interiors. So there's a nice color mix. We also have products for furniture, so we are using that. There's a coffee machine. There's a kitchen there. You can just catch up. There's high seating. High seating is becoming an interesting element, that either you can stand, and I'm sitting with you and talking. Maybe if you're doing 10 podcasts a day, Tom, I'm sure half of them you would be doing standing, because it's easy for you to to interact. So I think those are happening a lot. On the technical aspect of it, if I may say so, the glare, the heat part was already being looked at. Uh, um, but now I think last 2 years, people have seen extreme summers. I would say even Australia has been like that, and Europe has been crazy. I think the air conditioning element, or how to manage heat within the office, is becoming a key element now, whether forced by climate change or environment change, or again to make a space comfortable. And slowly and slowly, I would say the acoustic element is now coming up. So we have the glare, we have the heat, all those elements, and the design of the space. But acoustic is coming up, because the more you have open spaces, the more I always differentiate acoustics in that element, that you differentiate between bad noise and good sound. So you're not looking for recording rooms. I'm sure you might have one for you, because you do so many podcasts. But what you look at is, you're sitting in an open space. obviously you're not overhearing, but you can hear at least the other person who's opposite you or besides you comfortably, and you don't feel, I mean, then it's the same problem. It's better to be inside the room rather than in an outside workspace. So people are exploring that, and that's catching up a lot more now. And in the terms of the design, designers also looking at it. Acoustics experts are being called now. We have this example in some of the projects in Australia and New Zealand, but those are public projects or sports. It's becoming a very key element that an acoustician is involved, and they look at what's the noise level which changes in those kinds of, and the same thing is slowly coming in the work environment.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? And it's there's a lot of the different buzzwords as you said, collaboration zones and flexible spaces and all that. For some people, they might remember, going back maybe 10 years ago or 5 years, that the idea of hot desking was that flex, that mode of let's get a little bit more agile with our approach with how we use our spaces, as in people could, use as in the hot desking concept. But what would often happen then is you would find, and personally, I'm terrible in open offices, because I'm one of those people that needs things to be quiet to be able to focus. And what used to happen in that hot desking world, and we had a lot of clients tell us this as well, is they'd come in and then the first thing they would do is put their headphones on. So now the world has changed and they're working from home and they're probably performing better. And a lot of them have reported, well, there's no point coming in now because I just can't, I can do I don't need my headphones when I'm at home because I'm in a quiet space. So that acoustic element and focusing on that makes a lot of sense to accommodate different modes of working and different styles of workers as well and their preferences. Sure. It sounds like noise or acoustics here is one of the main things that you mentioned. I guess from a mental health perspective, what are some of the implications, I guess, of having a noisy environment? Like what are some of the, I guess, the frustrations, how I've mentioned, those introverts there that maybe need the headphones on and things to be quiet. What do you think are the main issues or considerations from a mental health perspective or mental wellness perspective?
I mean, I suppose the fact that if somebody moves from a closed space to an open space, I mean, even for a meeting or something, they would it's like they feel there would be a lot of clutter and too much noise is going around, and then kind of it affects them to, I would say, focus even in that one-to-one interaction or one-to-many interactions, which may be kind of a informal interaction, if I may say so. I think that's an element which then has a risk that, okay, if you because the whole office will be designed like that, okay, some key management, because of confidential elements and everything, may need to have a enclosed space, but it may be also of glass, not really panels that you cannot see through or whatever. So that kind of then you feel, it's I am doing this, but I feel I'm not able to complete the work which I was thinking of to complete, because first of all, something which should have been done in 15 minutes, I'm taking half an hour, 45 minutes to do so. Then I come back, there's still, so many noises in my head which remain, because as I mentioned, that consciously you are doing one or two things, but subconsciously, whatever is going on in the background, it's being absorbed, and that way, so that leaves you with a heaviness. And if at the end of the day, okay, we get tired, the day has gone, but tiredness is also, there are two elements, the physical element and the mental element. And I think if mental tiredness happens a lot more and on a regular basis, then either the person will say, I'll stop, I'll take a break, it's too much, or I'll kind of find another place to work with. And then there's an element also with, in today's electronic environment, I mean, it was already there, but a lot of messages come through different platforms, chatting platforms, the emails are coming, somebody else is calling. After COVID, there was a big jump in the businesses and the demand, so there was sorry, everybody was under pressure. So those kinds of things, in the end, what you want is, I mean, while work, we know it's not, it may not be per se physical like a sports person, but the last thing you want is to become mentally tired. Yeah, it may happen, but in the end, you still have to go back, be with your family. And imagine if you're mentally tired and you're also driving back, say a distance, and you come back home and you carry that. I mean, it again does not help you with the environment when you're back home with your family members. So it gets aggravated. So while we may say, oh, there is no direct correlation to see that, but in the end, it does happen. It does happen, and if you start losing people or your talent because of this, then it's a worrying sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really, like, this conversation's really interesting because it's talking in contrast to some of my other conversations. It's really around the built environment and how that can impact our well-being, our individual well-being. And if you add up all of that across an organization, for the example that you've just brought up there, which is that fatigue or that tiredness from potentially noise interruptions and therefore not getting tasks or projects done on time, that can lead to a feeling of, well, tiredness, but also that feeling like I'm not doing my job properly or I'm not getting things done as I would like. So there's a really like a hidden impact that it can have on your well-being, and through things like the International Well Building Institute and the Well Standards, there's a lot of science and great evidence around this now as how important it can be. I think, Nitin, maybe one of the other elements that we haven't mentioned here is lighting as well. Is that something that's is focused in on at the moment as a key trend, or is that something that was sort of dealt with a little while ago?
No, it has always been there. I would say in the past, it was more about internal lighting. So all the gadgets which you may use, what kind of a lamp, whether it's a yellow light or a white light, how it's been done. So that was already happening. But now I think what has happened is the awareness towards sustainability and the environment, and also a lot of talk which is happening, and we can see that also about climate change. What There's a thought which is coming: can I take the advantage of the light outside, now whether it's sun or whatever, and then design my space, which also helps me and save and conserve energy. Now it could be heating loads, cooling loads. It could be light where I can still play with the natural light but not have glare on my computer screen or my workspace screen or where I'm working. But at the same time, I use less of the energy. So the lighting now, as an exterior source, sun is always there. In that sense, context of it, how do we use that? And that's where then when you're designing either offices or buildings, and most of the facades generally tend to be glass. Now, how are you playing with that? So we see a lot of architects and designers playing a very key role now. Okay, blinds inside, everybody knows, but there's an element of, can I look at exterior shading? Can I look at exterior elements of solar protection, where it could be an exterior blind, it could be an exterior awning, where then I manage and regulate the light, and add to it if I can also manage the thermal load of the building, because if heat blocked outside the building is much better, where if the heat already comes inside the glass, then okay, the blind will help you, but the heat is already in the building, so it does not help much with your cooling loads or the air conditioning usage. So that is really happening. People are much open. There are, I would say, a lot of, even in countries like India, which for me was a big surprise. I learned about it earlier this year, that there's an exterior shading organization and association which has come up, which actually we were even being in this industry, we were never aware of. But you see that in Europe, these kinds of association organizations are really working to push that concept, which ties in and tunes in with all the elements of sustainability, energy conservation, and having a very nice workspace. Because finally, if you can connect to the environment when you're sitting in your room, there's nothing better than that to feel fresh. To be locked inside in a closed area, no windows, no natural light. In the end, it will also get on your health, and it will affect, as we spoke about, the mental element of it. So if you can tie in with your exterior environment, at least you feel connected, and then you have that feeling of freshness also throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. There's that real human need sometimes, and I feel it as well. Where if I'm in the city for too long, and I really need to be around some green spaces. So what we're seeing and when you connect with either it's a building and there's it's a lot of greenery, for example, on the outside, you automatically feel better when you're in there. That's a nice feeling because you feel a little bit grounded from the nature that you see and the nature that you can interact with. One other thing I've noticed a little bit just through my research and learnings is a little bit more focus on green roofs, which might seem a little bit sort of like an interesting topic to go on in this conversation, but just the green, adding green to the roofs across different cities. I think it's Paris. Is it Paris where they're mandating this now? I think where all the buildings have to have green roofs, or they're moving towards that. And I think Australia's following that lead, or is trying to.
Yeah, it's and I think it's coming back to the same point that people have realized, and in fact, in the last 6 months in Europe, we see even our manufacturing is in France and in Germany. We see the level of elements of cost pressures which the energy cost is putting now. You suddenly now there's that element of acceptance. Okay, it will take time because buildings cannot be changed overnight. There's a new one coming. There's an old one which has to be then adapted. So this green roof all is towards that direction, and it's not only green roof. We see how facades are designed today. We participate in a lot of facade conferences. I present there also, and we talk about having a facade mesh as a second skin, which then you're able to block 85% of the heat before coming into the building. So in that sense, there's a lot of. I mean, I've been doing since last many years in Asia and other parts. I see a lot of more interest even from facade designers and building designers that okay. You can play aesthetically, you can design, you can print, you're still connected with the environment because there's a good view through, but you're able to manage the heat load. So I think all that is coming from that direction, that when you have concrete structures, you don't even have space to plant a tree. Then where do you go? How do you make it a breathable space? How do you make it a cooling space for your buildings and manage the energy from what it exists already? I think that's in that direction. Even in Singapore, it's a small area, big density of people, a lot of concrete structures. But I would say one of the most greenest cities, I would say, in the world, considering the space is there here in Singapore in that sense. And so landscaping is a very key element here in Singapore, and that's part of the old design, whether they make an highway, whether they make a new area of office area and everything. So having green roofs, having a green facades in terms of how trees are there, or even some floors when they leave it open so that trees can be put there. I think it's all part of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting and it's exciting as well. As a person I live in Melbourne, and it's a great city. You'll visit it eventually, Nitin, when you can in your travels with work. But yeah, it's a great city and it's got a lot of growth, and it's just exciting to see and hear some of these things that are a little bit more coming from a sustainability perspective as well. One of the other big challenges, Nitin, I guess, for organisations or commercial real estate people or property groups as well, is like, how do you, with office workers, not that idea of how do you pull them back in, because the hybrid environment or the remote working is working quite well for some places, but there is a lot of office space that's let's be real, it's been empty and underutilized. So I'm wondering as well, from your perspective, are there any things that you're seeing that from a design or building perspective that are really being lent on a little bit to help encourage employees back to the office?
So I think this concept we talked about, open interactive workspaces, that's becoming a big thing. You've seen many people have entered into this business to create collaborative workspaces. So it's true that while you work from home, but if you need to meet people, I mean, you're part of an organization, you're part of a human ecosystem, which is also needed, so it's not about, okay, last 1.5 years, sometimes we were forced by policies and everything, which was in the safety interests of the citizens. But in the end, finally, everything cannot happen through a Teams or a Zoom or any video conference. It becomes more transactional. You come with a list, you do the checkbox. Okay, I've covered all the points, and say bye-bye, thank you. And you say, oh, sorry, I have to stop now. I have to enter into another video call. So whereas the softer elements where you can discuss some more things around the sitting around having a cup of coffee or whatever. So that's missing. So I think people need that. So more and more collaborative workspaces have also come up as businesses that, okay, you both a few people are working from home, but they need to meet. So what's the
Mm.
best way? Maybe office is too far, or maybe they feel, okay, let's go to this place where, okay, we have access to everything, a nice meeting room, let's sit down there and let's do our thing. So this is happening a lot, and I see that more and more. When I was in India, I saw that last week. In Singapore, it's becoming a big thing. So a lot of commercial spaces which are in the city CBD area, those are getting converted and transfer, redesigned in that sense. So it's a good business model. People are looking at it. And then obviously, I mean, if people can go back and how the organization is managing, as you said, the hybrid working, that's also happening. So I think it's a good business, I would say, a space management to enter to, and people are still appreciating that, because that is, at least that is started, you seeing that happening a lot, where, okay, if two of your colleagues are in a close by area, okay, rather than driving 40-50 kilometers, okay, let's find a place to work together, and you can still do the same things, and maybe those are the only people you would have met if you had gone to the office that day, for example.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. And that kind of, I kind of like to think of it as taking a little bit of the best from co-working, where that was, a few years ago, as that, like you were saying earlier, is like making it feel like home. That's really great. And certainly at a practical level, I've seen in the last 6 months, lots of people and teams coming together in the office, and they're really just, the main focus is really that social connection, which can really enhance obviously our overall sense of well-being, because we're not robots. We shouldn't be looking at screens and interacting one-on-one, or all of those digital distractions increase when we are in a remote, fully remote sort of environment. So there's certainly a place for all of that. That's amazing. And
If I may add on this point, just sorry, Tom, on the co-working space, one interesting thing I'm seeing, I think before COVID, it was called a co-working space, but the element was that people who did not have an access to a workspace, I mean, it was, say, people or professionals working in a city, they're just starting up operations. For them to take out a big space was not so cost effective, so let's have a small room where we have a common facility. It was a co-working space, but in the end it was your own space. I mean, the co-working is a misleading here, but what is now happening is, in the element of real definition, it is becoming a co-working space, because you have an office, but you're actually coming there for half a day or few hours and then working together there. So it's a bit of change which has been happening in these. So these spaces are also renting out spaces for an hour. It's like they've created those restaurant chairs kind of thing, where you have a small private space, so you can sit there, take that space for a couple of hours, interact. And that's a change which is happening in this co-working space design, and the people who entered into this business also.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and it's only going to enhance everyone's work experience at the end of the day. Nitin, I've just got one last question for you, and I like to ask this, and it's for someone like you with lots of experience in this space. You're seeing the trends evolve, and you can probably predict and start to think a little bit ahead. So my question is really around the future of work. What does it look like for you in offices or workplaces in, say, 10 years, based on your current role and just your knowledge in the area? What do you think it looks like?
So I'll start from the bigger part of it. I think the first part would be, we talked a bit on that, is how the buildings will be designed. I mean, in terms of when a new building or a space is coming, what are people doing that? So on our overall part, and here I'm talking the exterior part. So we talked about green roofs, we talked about facades. I think how facades are going to be designed to manage the heat load, to manage the light, to manage the glare and the aesthetics, and not to take down an old building, but really convert an old building, envelop it into a nice new building, in terms of aesthetically. I think that's catching on a lot, and it will really become a key element. It's like, I foresee when we had these, plastered walls which are still there. Okay, every 2 years I need to change the paint, right? So that's what I foresee in terms of facade designs happening going forward,
Hmm.
and more awareness and openness is coming towards that. Now, when you come to the inside part, I think collaborative workspaces, but then what's the next in that? Okay, we've talked about open space, nice design, nice colors, heat, glare, acoustics, which is obviously will be a big thing in terms of it may one become a level, I would say, that it becomes standardized with heat, light, and acoustics. I mean, that's where I see, and we try to encourage that. It's happening. Third would be like when you have collaborative spaces, you still have this challenge. I have to take my laptop. Where do I connect it? We've seen in some of the sci-fi movies, where they bring the screen directly. It's a virtual screen. You're playing, you're
Mm.
projecting. I suppose maybe that would be a very key part, because okay, you're sitting there, two of you, suddenly you feel, oh, I need to show something. Yeah, then you're struggling. The screen is small. I have to bend. Can I call for a screen somewhere? I mean, a
Mm.
digital, a virtual one. I immediately, through my LAN network in the office, I project it on that, and it's a private one. Only two of you are seeing it, but at least it's the next element, I would say, in the technology part, which I see could happen. And after that, I think all the necessary other elements of maybe giving like a nice cafe look and all those things which make you feel that I want to be here, encourage more people to interact, encourage doing more events as companies, so that people can come and meet. Maybe families can be brought over one of the days. Some companies do that. That These are few things I feel will happen. May take time from country to country, city to city, or company to company, because
Mm.
it requires a bit of investment. But I think once people realize the biggest investment is people, then anything around that will always look smaller. And I think that the
Mm.
human capital, how do I preserve, how do I encourage, how do I motivate, once that is known, then I think every else cost you don't think in money terms, because real money is being brought by your talent anyway to the organization.
Mm, yeah, that's a nice big thinking there, and I think the technology one's a really interesting one. That idea of taking that a step further is almost that you as a hologram, and you're speaking with someone who's on the other end, maybe in another country, and they're on their own thing. I'm not a technologist, so I don't know enough about it, but I've certainly that idea of walking into an office space and there's a cafe and it automatically knows what you want or what your personalized order is. So that personalization from a tech perspective, we're saying 10 years, so that's 2035, 32. So it's actually,
Not
it's
too far. Yeah.
things have happened so fast in 2 years. So imagine another 10. It's pretty. I like to think like that. It's kind of fun to shoot some ideas around Nitin with you. Thanks so much for your time. It's been we've explored every element here, haven't we? We've gone pretty deep into your expertise, and I really appreciate your insights. They're really fascinating. So thanks for your time.
No, thank you, Tom. And actually, I mean, the obviously, as a person who's asking questions, that's what it makes interesting, because how do you? I mean, the kind of questions you've asked. I mean, it's while I'm answering, sometimes some thoughts also come to my mind, and it has actually one or couple of things have just come to my mind also. So it's always interesting to have these interactions, and thank you for the very insightful and interesting questions.
Yeah, no, thank you, and all the best with your travel and the rest of your couple of weeks ahead of you. We've got a busy time ahead, so take care and thanks again.
And thank you, Tom. And I hope maybe it's another just one more month for the winters in Melbourne, and you'll be looking forward to the summer cycle coming over from September onwards. So wishing you the very best
Absolutely,
also.
absolutely. Yes, I look forward to the warm weather. Thanks, Nitin.